something I've been thinking about for a long, long time. That, in fact, the political elite in D.C., and I know them, I've worked among them, I spent a lot of time in D.C. training people for radio that were coming out of New York for TV, here's the thing. Here's the thing. As long as you and I, as Americans, get together on a set agenda. Now, we may not agree on the road to get to that common goal, but the agenda nonetheless, that should be all that is necessary. We need a convention of states. We need to take the power back. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for why we let the power get away to begin with. They are wide and they are varied, and you know as well as I do, we did this. We did this to ourselves. And I'm not, is it Tamara or Tamara? Which one is it? Tamara Colbert is co-director of Convention of States, Texas, is with me. And Ms. Colbert, thank you for being with me. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I almost got in a car wreck when I heard you talking about taking our power back in the Convention of States, and I thought, I have to call into the show because you are 100% right. Not only we are done sitting in the bleachers, you're right. It's time to get in a coaching position and tell our leaders what we want them to do. They haven't been listening, Rick. And you're right. It's time now for us to get re-engaged and take our power back. And praise the Lord, the Convention of States Project, we got a victory, right, to show people it can be done. We, the people, can do it. This is our opportunity right now. I'm so proud of Texas at this exact moment.
No, I think you're right. You know, a lot of people, if I hear it once a day, I hear it 1,000 times a day. Rick, I'm really not into politics. What kind of show you do? Well, I'm not really into politics. Do you eat? Do you own a home? Do you rent an apartment? Do you drive a car? Do you send children to school? All of those things are connected to politics in some form or fashion.
Well, here's the thing. The one amazing thing, the Convention of States here in Texas, we have today we hit 126,000 volunteers and supporters. We all agree and know that the federal government is never, ever going to limit its own power, right? And you saw last week the lack of will to fully repeal Obamacare demonstrates that. And we know the solution for fixing Washington must come from the states, not inside the Beltway. And as I sat up in that gallery on Thursday with 256 people and yet dozens of states watching what was happening in Texas, you know, we had this conversation, kind of a running conversation, right, that Americans do hard things. We believe in the possible. We are not afraid of the impossible. And so seeing what happens when citizens galvanize and say, you know what, we're going to be educated, we're going to be integrated with our legislators. It's time for the people to fight back. And Convention of States and using Article 5 that our founders gave us, not if, but when this day came, we can do this. I've got 126,000 people, Rick, who believe now we, the people, can fix D.C. We, the people in Texas, can fix this mess in Austin under the, Speaker Joe Strauss. We can do it, and we're not stopping. We are growing our citizen army like never before.
Well, I think it's important for people, the vast majority, and you know this, but the vast majority of people are not engaged. They're informed to some degree, but they're not engaged. This is an effort that will take the engagement of the majority of the American people because they have been left to their own devices for so long in D.C., and I know because, as I said, I work there. They're not going to go quietly into the night. The founders envisioned this. You know, I'm a big student of the founders and the Constitution, and if you look at what they wrote and the way they wrote it, they knew or imagined that this day would come, and it has come. So we need to do whatever it is we can to inform. I think number one is educate. Everybody's got to be understanding exactly what this is, what it does, and what their input means. And then, the big fight of the political elite on both the left and the right.
Well, here's the premise of what you're saying. I love the fact you're a student of the founders, because America's founders acted on the boldest political vision in the history of the world. They staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the conviction that the people are sovereign, right? That vision was to never, ever surrender our sovereignty and to be those guardians on the wall, those guardians of the liberty, so that we were the watchdogs watching our legislators. And so what I think we've done is let's be clear, Rick. The left spends every waking moment seeing how they can amass power. Even a win for them, they never stop. And conservatives and Republicans traditionally, once we have a victory, we stop. We go back to our day jobs and what we were doing with our families. And we kind of forget what that win feels like. And we think we don't need to be guardians anymore. And you know what? In Texas, Rick, there are groups, progressive groups, I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to elevate them on your show, right now, who are having people move into the state to run for, quote, nonpartisan elected opportunities like the ISD, so that they can try to get into the system and start fundamentally transforming Texas. And we need to be aware of this. I just had this conversation a half an hour ago at the grocery store with a clerk. And she said, "Can I sign up?" I gave her my card and I said, "Yes, we're growing the citizen army, but it takes all of us." And as citizens, honestly, Rick, I love my country. I'm the 12th generation great granddaughter of Captain Miles Standish, and I have never, ever felt more powerful as a citizen than after watching and being part of this group of patriots who got this passed in the Texas House last week. Incredible.
I tell you what, we're talking with Tamara Colbert, co-director for the Convention of States, Texas. And Ms. Colbert, I'm going to take advantage of the fact I've got you. When we come back, if I don't know where she is, she may be pulled off to the side of the road someplace. What I would like her to do is go through and give a thumbnail sketch of how you set it up. I mean, I can do it. If she can't stay, I'll do it myself. But how you set it up, and then what it would allow us to achieve. I think once people know what the end game is, they are more likely to inform themselves of how to get to that point. All right, so let's talk about what is necessary and what we're seeking to achieve, and what the Convention of States would do, in fact, for the people not only in the state of Texas, but nationally. Talking with Tamara Colbert, co-director of the Convention of States, Texas, and hopefully she's parked in a safe place right now, because, Tamara, what I'd like you to do is give a thumbnail sketch for those people. We're high on education on this show.
Sure.
So if people aren't aware of the Convention of States, let's give a thumbnail sketch of what it entails and what we're trying to achieve.
Well, the Convention of States it comes from Article 5 of the Constitution, right? And there's two ways to propose amendments. It isn't a constitutional convention, the threat of the runaway, nothing like that. It gives Congress one way to propose amendments, the only way it's ever been done, but it gives also an opportunity for the states to get together, to convene a state convention where they could propose amendments that would really be the exact same thing. We know that amendments work. We know the system works. We know how ratification works. And so this process has never been done before. It was attempted in 1861, from the Washington Peace Conference, and it was too late to prevent the Civil War, as we know. But this was really the last and most serious time that this was looked upon as a solution, as a viable solution for keeping that connectivity and keeping our nation strong and prosperous. And so the Convention of States project is all about being committed to stopping the federal government's abuse of power. And so do we know this can work? We absolutely do. We know that there's been hundreds of Article 5 applications submitted to the Congress since our nation was founded and our Constitution ratified. None of those petitions or applications have aggregated together in order to reach that constitutional threshold, which is 2/3 or 34 of the various states to get that convention called. And so, there's a couple things, Rick, that are really interesting as a student of politics, a student of history as yourself, and that is that we know a couple of things. When Trump was sworn into office, we, the people, were exposed to what is now known as the deep state or the administrative state, meaning what's frightening is that our federal government is essentially operating with people who were never elected to run the country. That's how we know. And so as a result of that, we can see that D.C. is resisting almost unanimously, right? Whether it was Mitch McConnell on the day after Trump was elected, coming out and saying, Mr. Trump, term limits, I'm not going to take up term limits on my Senate agenda. That's why we have elections. I mean, on and on. So we know that the federal government won't fix itself. So Colonel George Mason, 2 days before the Constitutional Convention ended, said, wait a second, you guys, we have done all these things, but we haven't left the primary responsibility of liberty and freedom to the most important reason we're founding this country. And that is that the people ultimately need to have some keys. They need a final check and balance where when Washington becomes too big, too corrupt, too bloated, or oversteps its constitutional bounds, the people have recourse. And where should government? They wanted government held closest to the people, which is why we have the 10th Amendment. They believed that government closer to where the people live will be that final check and balance against federal tyranny. And so here we are today. And that's what the Convention of States project is all about, educating citizens and legislators, providing training so that we can help people understand what we're about and help join this movement, because it's going to take millions of us to make a real difference in terms of putting the states together, getting that 34 states. Texas became number 11. We've got Missouri. We've got Nebraska. Even, believe it or not, New Jersey has filed their application this session as well. So there's a lot of liberty-loving people who want a peaceful solution, right? A peaceful solution. And the only way to fix D.C. is by the states standing together against that federal overreach.
Absolutely. And if you think about this long term, you have to remember the founding fathers were putting together a government unlike any government on planet Earth at the time. And, eventually they reach a compromise that distributed powers between the individual colonists at the time, the federal government, what they called the general government back then, and the states. So, this is not some pie in the sky, well, in a perfect world. This was something that the founding fathers imagined could happen down the road, and they put a check and balance in the Constitution for us to use. And I think they would want us to use it at this point. I tell you what, Tamara, I'm just about to hit my break. If people want more information, how do they go about getting information, website, that kind of thing?
Please go to the conventionofstates.com, conventionofstates.com. Sign up. I get to meet every person that signs up and puts their Texas address in, and we get you connected with your district leader. We have over 150 leaders. We have house districts where that's how our designation is. So we've got leadership through the entire state. We're going to be doing a summer tour in every house district in Texas to introduce ourselves, talk about our next steps, And we have our eye on draining the swamp in Austin. And we could use everybody and their brother to help us make a government in Texas that works for us. And we're going to be part of that solution, not part of the problem.
Sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Our success depends on you, so we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.